I went in there to buy some Delta 8 because I had heard of the Delta 8, or I'd used some Delta 8 THC. And I got talking to the lady that owns the store, and she was like, "Oh yeah, Sanctuary, I know you. That's you. Oh my gosh, that's you." And so we had a nice conversation, and then she just like filled my bag with a bunch of Delta stuff. But they had the Delta 9 and Delta 10, which I had not heard of yet. And the Delta 10 is, at least I have found it to be, much more kind of floaty, trippy kind of feeling. And when you combine the 9 and 10, or the 8 and 9, or the 8 and 10, whatever, you get some pretty interesting synergistic effects. So this sucker here is from our informal sponsor, I'll say, a Louisville-based One Love dispensary, hemp dispensary, and they have a bunch of Delta products. They made a brownie. They had a Delta 9 and 10 brownie that I took like 2 bites of on the way to the retreat last week, and I was rocking when I got there. So it's interesting, all these workarounds, and it's ridiculous is what it is.
Yeah.
That we've got to find all these loopholes to consume a plant.
Oh, it's like the same exact chemical that's in the illegal plant, and
The sugar in
typical.
this sucker is more dangerous than the THC in this sucker. That's the irony. And my kid can eat a sucker. So anyway, I don't know how strong this one's going to be, but I'm going to give it a go here, and I'm going to promote One Love Dispensary in Louisville, Kentucky. So if anybody's looking for some legal THC products, some Delta 8, 9, or 10, One Love Dispensary has my support. Steve Urquhart, what's up, my brother?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. About yourself?
Good. How's my sound? Is this good?
Yeah, you sound great. Look great. I love that shirt. It's some good colors. What do you got on there? Is it crabs?
Crabs. Yep.
Oh, Steve's got crabs. One of the things I love about you, Steve, already is that I know we can just bullshit. This doesn't have to be some kind of super serious conversation. I'm interested in how you feel as a religious leader, different than you might feel as a clinician. Personally, I feel like I get a lot more freedom to just be me, which is really important to me in this work. So before we go too far, I'll just introduce you to Tristan Harris. Tristan has been right-hand man here on Psilocybin. He is Tristan, you've been with Sanctuary for how long? When did you become a member of Sanctuary?
A little over a year ago. First time I joined church service, I was in my school's study room.
Tristan left medical school to be a sanctuarian.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was well, go ahead and give Steve a little bit of your background, how you kind of made that transition, Tristan.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I was in Eastern Kentucky. I attended a medical school that was in my hometown, and Eastern Kentucky, as well as much of the nation, is kind of ravaged by a opioid epidemic, just a war on drugs epidemic. I'd had this lingering thing that I didn't really always let out, that I knew I wanted to work in like a psychiatry. I was always interested in, what was going on with the psychedelic renaissance. And this was before I even knew that there was a renaissance prior. And, you reach this place where you think that I'm at X level and science is science. And it turns out that not all institutions want to see people heal in a way that they are, it's their right. And And throughout the months that I was part of Sanctuary, the lead council of Sanctuary kind of, got familiar with me and was watching the struggle of knowing that I wanted to go down this path. And on my wedding day, I was speaking with Eric, and he's giving me words of encouragement. And he said, I see that you're not able to go where you want to with your current path.
Yeah.
And if you want to come and join Sanctuary, I will try to teach you some of the things that I know. It's been amazing.
Yeah, with the pivot you made.
Thank you.
Yeah, mad respect to that, Tristan. That was a really big leap that a lot of people want to make and are not going to.
Yeah.
Which I think is a neat bridge for us to talk about the churches as compared to the clinical wellness organizations. There's really so much that we could talk about here. Just give a little quick introduction to Steve. I'm assuming that he needs no introduction, but we all do, I'm sure. Steve Urquhart is the founder of the Divine Assembly. This is a sacred mushroom church out of Utah. And Steve is a recovering Mormon, like myself, as a recovering Catholic. And that's just some of the similarities we have. But I'll let Steve tell his story. Moreover, just for those who are listening, however, if you really want to hear and read Steve's story, I suggest you first and foremost check out the Psilocybin Says podcast that's going to come out on Wednesday. That's a wonderful conversation that Steve and I had probably about a month ago now. And in the links on the show notes is the website for the Divine Assembly, which you can become a member of almost immediately, and a really impressive article that was written by, what was the author's name, Steve? Oh, lost your audio.
Are we there?
Yeah. Well, apparently the internet doesn't want to hear her name because whenever you said the name, it just went silent.
That's weird. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Cassidy Rosenblum.
All right, Cassie Rosenblum
Is
for
her name.
the Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone, not a small publication, so that had to be really exciting for you all. But yeah, Steve, let's just talk tonight about what it's like to be in the privileged position that we are. And anybody that wants to be a part of the conversation, you can join in. Tristan, go ahead and drop that link in the chat, if you will. Anybody wants to join the conversation, you can come on in and talk to Steve, myself, and let's just talk it out. So, what's on your mind tonight, Steve, as the revolutionary psilocybin minister that you are?
First, let's check my sound. Am I coming in clearly? Do I need to go scramble?
No, you're good. I don't know what that was. It was just like a couple times there when you maybe if it got distance from you or something. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. I'll pick up where you left off. The psychedelics versus the religious spiritual aspects. So I teach medical school. I teach health policy. So extremely bright students, PhD students, and as you would guess, one of our psychedelics, because that is one of the most exciting, interesting aspects of what's going on there. And what we talk about is academia is for very good reason to discussions about religion and spirituality. But what are we when we have a cure for depression in a lot of cases, thing that helps with a lot of mental health issues, and the people who are cured, the people who are helped, immediately want spiritual element of the recovery.
Mm-hmm.
This is fascinating. So I like how you framed up this episode already. For modern medicine, I'm a big fan of it, beneficiary of it, and wonderful things. But what I'm starting to see a lot of is like the people who have their licenses, a lot of licensed therapists who they see right now what psychedelic people who need help, and some of them are abandoning their licenses, others are considering abandoning them. They're pretty impatient help to their patients, to their clients.
Mm-hmm. I think they might create a bigger change in the mental health, the therapeutic environment than anything is when the therapists themselves are willing to chuck their license for this, what is obviously the next stage in mental health and spiritual health.
Yeah, what I'm telling my friends, the ones this is your license, you work very hard for it.
Mm-hmm.
Ignore everything I say. However, changes on the horizon, my friends, is look, you worked hard for this. This license has meaning. Do things as you think appropriate, and if you have a licensing board, do it. But you're going to be able to use that license with psychedelics in the near future. I'm talking in the Utah legislature, and they're thinking that this January, February likely will, like Oregon has done, likely therapists to use psilocybin in their therapy.
So hold on, you're saying, and I know y'all that are listening, we're getting a little bit of a delay here. I don't know, Tristan, it might just see what happens if you pop out. It's probably not you, but just see if there's too much, if the bandwidth. But so you're saying that in Utah, you all are talking about having legal therapeutic access as soon as when?
Well, exactly. Thank you for double checking, because this isn't the natural order of things.
It didn't sound like, yeah.
Oregon, Colorado, California. Yeah, Utah is on this, but we have mental health issues out here, and the legislature is attuned to that and wanting to do something. It last year put together a task force to study for mental health, and it really was well constructed. These are folks who hold the credentials, the licenses, looking at as they only could do if they look impartially. We need to use it, and there is a very good chance that which is January, February, the Utah legislature will authorize psilocybin.
All right, so this is, wow, what a big can of worms we've opened up here. First question I have is, how much influence have you and the Divine Assembly had in Utah legislation around this? I mean, those of you who don't know, Steve was a 8-year senator, 8-year congressman in the Utah legislature. He's got tons of experience there, and now he's obviously started this psychedelic church. Yeah, 16 years total, right? Yeah. So you as an individual and as an organization, how much influence have you had over this discussion, do you think?
I'm going to say practically none. I am in conversations with people. This is something, the political hacks, and that's where when it comes to medicine, that's really what policy. I know politics, I know governance. I don't know the science behind it. Those folks are the ones who largely originated it, and they're running with it. And so it makes no sense for someone like me to jump in and maybe upset.
So, okay, now next question is, are they going to upset your apple cart? Does remind me, does Utah have a state RFRA?
We have very robust protections in our constitution. Says that government shall not interfere with it. Have perfect tolerance of religious sentiment, and that hasn't really. But as you might imagine, Mormons, they don't hang around in religion, and that is in our constitution.
Okay. Well, because that's the issue coming up in Oregon, right? Is while they have the medical access coming up in 2023, the religious access is being treated just like the medical. And I think that's a huge problem personally.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. You know, you and I have had a little we've discussed it. We've had input with one there. To me, religion is its own thing. It doesn't need to be mixed up with regulation and government. Religion has robust protection. I think government largely should just keep its nose out.
It's kind of interesting, though, that you would have that sentiment coming out of the Mormon faith, right? Because I don't know. I mean, when I think about Catholicism, if there was more scrutiny over the practices of the Catholic Church, then maybe we wouldn't have seen the horrible abuses of power that we have. You know, I'm still very much in favor of religious freedom. Anybody that's doing a criminal, that's committing an act of crime, particularly against a minor or in terms of sexual assault, should have to face that. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to me that you would have that completely hands-off perspective, seeing what the Mormon Church has done.
The history of Utah, Mormons were of Illinois. They were driven out of Ohio, so they crossed the plains, across the mountains to Utah and set up democracy. And so they really don't want government to mess around with them. Also, when they became a state, Congress was very nervous about it, not wanting it. So Congress kind of forced Utah to put in its enabling act and in it that there would be perfect tolerance of religious sentiment. Just making sure, didn't make sure, because the Mormon Church does run a lot in Utah, but the intent was that run the state.
Okay. Interesting.
And also I should add, remember, Mormons are very particular marriages and weddings and families, and so when they first came out, they were driven out in polygamous marriages. They practiced polygamy, and so they didn't want the government saying who. And so now it's kind of the same thing, that the Mormon Church is very Q, and they don't want the government to force them to sex marriages in their temples.
Can I just say how weird it is, how screwed up it is, that we have this separation of church and state overall, and yet somehow the government has some vested interest in our sex lives, in our marriage, like across the board. Like, what the fuck are they doing for all this time? Trying to get in our bedrooms, whether it's gay marriage or polygamy or polyandry or whatever the heck it is. So what I guess, that's a big question too, that has me now thinking the implications of a psychedelic culture. Like, what we don't even have a clue what this is going to unfold like. And if we look back at like the 60s and the 70s and we see how things went, I can't help but kind of have a level of curiosity as to what we're going to be looking like as an American culture if we do really, as it seems we are, adopt psychedelics as a part of our lifestyle practice.
And hopefully it will lead to some good changes. I mean, psychedelics, we both know this. People take psychedelics and they feel this connection to each other's. They feel community connection to universe. Right now, we're just horrifically divided. And I think it's kind of we're in the middle of a religious picture of Trump holding the Bible after he cleared out Lafayette Square. That's vulgar. That's what we have Christendom that is really ascendant. And you look at the Dobbs decision on abortion, that was purely religion. I mean, there's some Catholics, they told the other gods to just shut the fuck up. It doesn't matter if gods or Episcopalian, Presbyterian gods are okay with religion. Gods, at least the gods of some evangelicals and the Catholics, they won. Their case argued before Supreme Court, and now the heathens and infidels will their doctrines. So hopefully, I mean, religion, it is discussing, it governs the United States. I think that is part of the big going on, and I hope psychedelics can be part of what my bus.
What do you think about psychedelics and how they help us to reframe religion? We had some people today. We did discovery calls with some new members today, and one of the individuals was talking about how it was really a challenge for her coming into a church, but she had been on our Sunday Zoom calls and she had been reading our materials. She's like, I got to say, this is the thing that I identify with the most, but it still is like kind of creating an internal conflict to be involved with a religion. And I'm like, what's it going to look like as we shift the face of religion?
You tell me what you're seeing with people you're working with. What I'm seeing is a version of the divine. It varies significantly. Everyone seems to have an individualized experience with the divine, that their experiences, their values, where religion, a lot of it has cookie cutter requirements. Mm-hmm. If you commune, God will look like this, and God will talk along these lines. God will only doctrines, and that's not quite how a psychedelic experience works.
No, not at all. Well, I think, first of all, we got to create a bigger context for this word God, right? God for so long has been the guy with the white beard and the throne on the sky that hands down these edicts of how you live your life and the rules that you follow and who you fuck and who you don't, and the things that you put in your body and the things that you don't, and the things that you wear and the things that you don't, which we are absolutely coming to a place in human culture where we see that, first of all, the controlling nature of that, and second of all, the absolute ridiculous nature of it, right? And I do find that, moreover, people seem to identify with the way that we're describing our understanding of God, which is which is consciousness, right? And to what you're saying, we are all vessels of consciousness. We are all filters of consciousness. And so the individual experience that is interfacing with this larger consciousness has to be different for every single individual. And it has to be different all of the time, because our state of being shifts, just like psychedelics so very clearly illustrate, based on our set and our setting, right? The mindset that you have going into a conversation, the setting that you are in. There's just so much information around us all the time. And that has such an impact on how we interface with this intelligence, as Brad is saying. You know, I do kind of use consciousness and intelligence interchangeably to some extent. Um, I ascribe myself as a pantheist. Like this picture, this wall, this computer, you as individuals, the air between us that we can't see, is all some kind of manifestation of consciousness, which within that consciousness there is imbued an intelligence that is so much bigger than our notions of intelligence. And it seems like people are more so identifying with that. You know, I study quite a bit of the new thought leaders from the early 19th century up to now who were saying a lot of the things that the mushrooms taught me before I started studying these teachers, right? That we co-create our reality with our awareness, with our state of being. And it seems like, without trying to get into kind of intelligent design or determinism, it does seem like the rise of psychedelics is very much in line and in time with this kind of subculture of expanding consciousness, of understanding our responsibility to creation. And that doesn't just mean like whether or not we recycle. It means in how we think and how we engage in this. I like to call it an interactive hologram. And, I, for one, am not always operating on my my highest potential there. But the community that comes through a church, the experience that comes through the sacrament, through meditation, through integration, really, of my psychedelic experiences, all of that gives me a bigger, more enriched, I wouldn't say understanding, I would say experience of this divine, right? And I think that's what appeals to a lot of the people that come to Sanctuary, is that we just say from the start that we don't fucking know what's going on. We're just exploring this thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, what do we do with an active sacrament? They started with the founder having a vision, and to agree with that vision, they have to follow that. They don't really get to have their own contradict that. Well, with psychedelics, everyone is they're communing, so everyone's kind of starting their own. Back to your question of what happens to society with this. We have a member who she was recently divorced, so didn't have employment outside the home, had 2 small children, and so she's like, oh man, what do I do? And communed with the divine, and she believes, which is the basis of that, she communed with the divine, and the divine said, look, you can't, so don't worry about that. If you think now's not the time to have this baby, then. And so she says that is the most religious experience of her life.
I love that.
What happens now when someone has that, and the court and the coach can kneel on the 50-yard line and give a performance prayer, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But what is this court that claims to love, what's it going to do when all sorts of Americans say, I communed with the divine and got guidance, so I don't really need to know, think about this issue. I got it from the main source. And then, I think a lot of our religion in this country is very performative. What happens when people really have a religion because this isn't borrowed light. What happens in this country when people really start?
No, I think it's a profound question. What it brings for me is another question. How to frame it?
I'm gonna, while you're thinking, that's what you and I are about, right? You have the Controlled Substance Act. It said mushrooms is a Schedule 1 banned substance. I had experiences where we're like, well, that doesn't work for us, and act accordingly.
No, I mean, that's why I'm eating this Delta sucker on here, just to show how ludicrous these laws against plants are. Kentucky will be probably one of the last 5 states to legalize cannabis, yet there are stores popping up every day that sell, a modified THC that makes it legal. It's just ridiculous. And that was probably one of the more compelling revelations that I had through psilocybin that drastically shift my life, is this notion that I'm not going to adhere to your unjust laws just because some man or men made them. But what I really want to get into, and this is some tricky stuff that I think we really need to explore as a community, is I have absolutely had delusional information come into me during psychedelic trips, right? Things that I thought were like in the
Absolutely.
trip. It's like, oh God, this is the truth. And you get out of it and you're like, hold up, let's back the fuck up now. And
yep.
I wonder, you and I talked a little bit on the podcast, but to go even deeper into it, how do we safeguard against, well, like the who is the jackass that was part of the January 6th thing that was wearing the horns and claimed him to be a psychedelic shaman?
Yeah.
Is there any responsibility that we have as a responsible psychedelic leadership community to form, I don't know, and how do we prevent kind of a collective perspective from becoming the same thing that we're dealing with right now? This is, I deal with daily. I think about this. How do we prevent our organization? How do we prevent this movement from becoming just a tripped out version of what we already have?
Yeah. Here's for me. So I come from a very dogmatic religion that you're going to do what the leaders tell you to do, or you will be disciplined. So they strip their members of religious autonomy. So, man, I just bristle when I see that. And so for me, and what I'm trying to build in the divine assembly is, Eric, Tristan, give whatever revelations you have for yourselves and live accordingly. Whether that's delusional, man, that's on you. I can't crawl inside your mind and know what's going. Just if you have any revelations for me, save it. I don't care. So it's I think if we are worried about our relationship with the divine, what the divine communicates with us, and we individually can process. But I just do not, I refuse to believe coming out of that the divine is going to give me any information that another human, in a word, that's bullshit.
I like that. I appreciate that greatly.
So there's that alone, there's some pretty good safeguards in that. And so, if you have one tenet, which is you can commune with the divine and receive direct. Oh, this member who I told you about with the baby forming inside, guidance was for her. And, someone would say, well, did she? I mean, do you have scientific evidence, medical evidence showing that is informing that opinion, and it is some religions. Whereas other religions, Jewish religion, it's when the baby draws first breath.
Mm-hmm.
Muslim religion, as I understand it, 100, what is it? And it's what is it? 100, but it varies, and so she's communing with a divine that gave her. Is completely in line with what other religions teach, but instead of just because you were United Methodist or whatever, she got it directly, and so that's her decision. So as long as people are impacting themselves and not harming, not okay, go to have at it.
No, I'm 100% with that. 100%. Well, we got somebody. Oh, I thought we had somebody popping in. Anybody wants to join in the conversation? We got some comments coming in, but if you want to be a part of the conversation, you are welcome to join. Let me post that link there. Boom. So you can hop on in, Nathan or Brad. Either one. I'd love for you to talk with Steve, share some of your experiences. I know Brad's got quite a bit of firsthand experience. So, do you consider yourself at this point a religious leader, or how do you perceive yourself within the church?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if I've shared this one with you, but people ask me, what is your role, Steve? Guide? Are you a prophet? Are you? And so, just so everyone will very clearly understand, I'm a lawyer. I created a legally defensible platform for people to worship and mushrooms. If I am your spiritual guide, you're fucked. I don't have. It's not. I've tried to guide ceremonies, and man, I could give you names. It's just a bad idea.
You're fucked. No, I feel that, man. I feel that. It's a weird position to be in. I guess, Tristan, I'm curious for, like, in all honesty, I'm curious how you perceive me within Sanctuary and how you think others perceive me in terms of like a religious leader.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting whenever I meet someone that's like new to Sanctuary, and it is hard for anyone, for you or Steve, for someone new to your organizations to not try to think of you as something other than. And I always try to just say, you're a human, like just like us. And, the more that they're around you, the more that they will experience that. From any religion, I grew up Pentecostal. And there was a hierarchy structure within that, as Steve has pointed to with his upbringing. I really don't see that within Sanctuary. I believe that at Sanctuary, everyone is looking each other in the sacred mirrors of their eyes, and we're all standing at the same level. Everybody's voice is important, specifically whenever it comes to our community circles and post Sunday service Zooms. It's it's about being heard, feeling held. I don't, for lack of better words, but but there is that place when we are on retreats where I know very little. I came from a medical background, so everything that I'm trying to learn is me observing, you in that space and Athena in that space, people who have experience working in this very sacred and vulnerable space. And, so for me, it is kind of like observing you and learning in that way. But that's not something that you place on me. I think that that's the key there. Is it
No, yeah,
something
please,
that
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
watching?
I do. Obviously, I've got experience, right? And I'm not trying. I don't want to leverage that experience to, be a disciplinarian over anyone. And if there's anything that I can teach, then that's what I want to do. It's kind of funny. Courtney was asking before I got on this call. She's like, do you ever think about putting like some kind of like guidelines in place. This is a safe space. And that's like what I try to do. I try for my role to just be like the safe space provider, provide a place for people to talk about anything. And, if there needs to be some moderation, sometimes, bring things back or whatever, that's fine. Probably one of my favorite memories around this whole topic, back when I was at Myco, and I had the good fortune of going on Duncan Trussell's podcast, through my friend Shane Moss. Me and Duncan, it's still kind of weird to think that I was like hanging out with Duncan Trussell, but we were sitting outside. I was smoking a cigarette. I occasionally smoke cigarettes. And I was smoking a cigarette, and we were talking about it. And I forgot how it was. He was talking about gurus and all that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, that's why. I said, honestly, that's why I smoke cigarettes and drink a beer with my guests, because I want to be on the level. And Duncan was like, man, you keep smoking those fucking cigarettes, man. You keep drinking that beer, man. You let everybody know you're one of them, man. I was like, yeah, that's right, Duncan. Thank you. I see we got Sasha ready to come in here. Let's see what Sasha's got to say for us today. Sasha, good evening. Afternoon, evening. Yeah.
Good to see y'all.
Hey, Sasha, how are you
doing today?
Been a while.
It has been. It's really good to see you, Steve. For those who don't know, I actually first got in touch with Steve just after my podcast with Dr. James Cook, the Living Mirrors podcast. He reached out to me, and we started chatting, and it's been really nice. It's been a while, though.
Yes, quite a while.
Nice. Yeah, what you got for us tonight?
Well, I just wanted to join in on the conversation because, well, it's a really interesting one, to say the least. I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. Well,
here, I'll tell you, back to what you were saying, Eric. Something fun that I am just recently to get myself off the platform, right? So it is not the Church of Steve. I was having coffee with someone, and he said, "What's your organization?" And I said, "Well, we're patterned after the mycelium." So I told him. He said, "That just feels like a lot of words to me." He said, if you don't have an organization, then you're just not aware of it. And so I'm like, shit, he's right. So thinking about it, in India, in every village has a council called the panchayat. I'm thinking, I call it a panch, which is a group, a council. I think what I hear, so I'm thinking you come into the Divine Assembly, you find your panch. You all of a sudden, your presence, your voice is magnified. A cohort around you, and we're going to do a certified grow panch of growers that, you're checking in on each other, and then each church group where, we have people who travel hours to come be with us in their own town, and people are contacting from other parts. Well, start it. You're autonomous, you're independent, you're on your own, but this is a way we can resources and share information and share inspiration, and kind of what you're doing this. That doesn't look quite safe. So I'm getting pretty to mess with that and see if we can add some more formality to it.
Well, there does have to be some kind of checks and balances here. You talked about in the Rolling Stone article, you talked about the psychedelic gurus. That's a very real thing. And even with therapists and clinicians, I have met therapists who are completely fucking irresponsible with psilocybin and MDMA and other psychoactives. So, it's like that, trying to find that balance of, you have your experience, you have your interpretation, you have your individual practice, but at the same time, as a community, let's do our best to make sure that everybody's safe and everybody's, cared for and protected. Sasha, in the last call we had last week got into quite a bit of the sexual abuse that's happened within the clinical trials up in MDMA trials up in Canada. And, that kind of stuff will happen. And I think that we definitely, we're in this work because we care about people growing and becoming the healthiest, best versions of themselves. And so, in order to make sure that at least is going in the right direction, I think we definitely need to have some guardrails, perhaps.
Well, that is something I would love. Like churches, let's get together and just discuss the absolute hell out of safety. Thing where I lose sleep is the reason. Part of the reasons improve is we end up in this really vulnerable to new thoughts, to new patterns, but that vulnerability also and we see it in the psychedelic space just like any other space, and there's the absolute hell out of me. And I'd love to know how other groups are to prevent it and address it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, one of the things that we absolutely do is that we have, and I guess this isn't always preventative as per the story from the MAPS issue, but we do follow the clinical protocol of having two facilitators there, usually of opposing gender, and for multiple reasons. But even beyond that, I think that the group experiences have the potential to maintain a lot more safety because you've got more visibility, you've got greater immediate accountability, where it's, we talked about this last week again, and I'm curious, Steve, to get your input on this, where I think it gets a little bit foggy and a little bit tricky is as we have growing community of people who are working with these boundary dissolving experiences, and bonds occur and things happen. Sometimes people may make what they consider a mistake down the road. And, it's like, so I think, I know it's manageable. But it does seem that with psychedelics and sexuality particularly, that there is the potential for lines to blur rather quickly if we're not really careful.
Well, it's going to be men that blur those lines for the most part. So what we say on our website is we aim to be the psychedelic. We say no one's here to hook up with you. People are here to heal, and we're kind of a nerd herd. We for whatever reason, maybe I'm a nerd. I don't know, but pretty reserved.
I think there's 4 of us here together, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but
we attract a pretty reserved bunch, and I say this isn't Tinder. There are a lot of ways to get together, and this isn't one. And I'm very serious about that because it's going to happen. But if we throw out the message of this is not it, don't come here for that, helps chase away would-be predators. And helps a lot of times. When I was early in psychedelics, I had some predation, a shaman, and two shamans who they were just full of them. So I put up with more from them than I would from any other human in any other set. Just thinking, well, I don't know, I guess this is how it goes. And so we try to tell our people goes. There isn't touchings, there aren't. Here's the rape hotline. A church is so we can be safe. Well, go ahead and report these things before we deal with these situations.
Well, I just wanted to kind of say, sorry, Steve. I didn't know that you were going on. doesn't that really come down to the community and the accountability that we all hold ourselves to coming out of those circles, and even in the times when we're not experiencing the divine, that it's this repeating practice, and everyone being held at the same level and being held accountable, that kind of prevents that. And for a new member who comes into the door, the protocols that you're putting in place, but then also once they see what the organization that you have is, they'll be like, okay, I can't hunt sheep here.
No, I think that you're right. I think that creating the culture within an individual organization, and Steve's doing that very well, laying it out. And I think that we do it really well also. I don't know as far as how you all gather and practice, what kind of regularity there is among members, but either way, I'm completely with you that like this is not the place for that. This is just not the place for that. If authentic connection occurs, then great. I mean, mushrooms brought my wife and I together, and I'm so grateful that they did. But yeah, that's that. And Tristan, what you're saying in terms of community accountability seems to have a lot more weight than perhaps even these kind of clinical protocol that are in place. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But, this instance that Sasha brought in last week, where you've got two MAPS facilitators who are working with an individual privately without any real scrutiny, that seems like that has a lot more potential for problematic behavior than when you've got a group of 15 or 20 people that are all taking mushrooms together, that are coming together semi-regularly in these group circles and having conversations, So I don't know. I have a feeling that the religious use of psychedelics is going to, in multiple ways, prove more safe and provide better outcomes for individuals than other applications.
I agree. I mean, there are exceptions to everything, but psychedelics really do promote autonomy. And if people enter spaces, sovereign autonomy, can think clearly and protect themselves, keep themselves away from what happens, hopefully have the strength to report it so it can be addressed.
Well, one of the things you said on our recording that comes out Wednesday is the individual personal responsibility is something that we need to keep coming back to in all of this. There is a tendency to blame the organization, blame the outside individuals, blame the medicine, blame blah blah. And like anytime you have that intuitive no, like if your body's telling you no, then get the fuck out. I've met a couple of people who have gone to different ceremonies. I worked with a guy recently who went all the way out to Seattle for an ayahuasca session, and he said he got into the session, and before they dosed, he was like, "Yeah, no, this doesn't feel right," and he got up and left.
Brilliant.
He left.
Brilliant.
I said, mad respect, because that's exactly what you should do.
Yeah, we've had some people come to and they walk in, take a look around, turn around and leave. And I'm just like, love that, but good call.
Yeah. Not for everybody. So what's going on? You all are meeting now? You got a regular meeting location? How's that working out? What's going on with that?
We do. It's just amazing. I called a friend who she's really connected. She runs the association, and so I said, "Hey, we need a meeting space. We need some." So she said, "Okay, give me an hour." And so in 15 minutes, and I live in a high rise in downtown Salt Lake. She said, "Go to your elevator to the something floor, knock on this door. He has a space he's let you use." So one of my neighbors, he's leasing an event, a restaurant that nothing's going on Sundays. Let's meet there. It's a beautiful space, and we just had our second meeting, and having a place, it's just amazing how that changes. It changes the tone of the conversations. Exciting. I assume you're experiencing something similar in your beautiful space.
Yeah, gosh, that's really what it's all about. We play this game we call the Google game. My wife leads, and I took part in the intake call today for several new members, and the game is you Google your name and sacred mushrooms. If you were to imaginary Google yourself and sacred mushrooms, what would you come up with? And for myself, in the imaginary world, there's a whole different slew of things that come up if you really Google it. But what comes up for me is the community, and that's what I have found over the years through working with the Sacrament is this community support. And yeah, having a place where people can come together, even like, so we did this retreat a couple weeks back, and there were probably 4 or 5 people who had never partaken before, but they had been coming to our circles, and all of these individuals were over 60. They all had some level of anxiety from severe to extremely severe. And all of them, after the mushroom session, all of them said that, yes, the mushrooms, this was incredible, and this is a life-changing experience, but the community that I came into, the conversations that I had leading up to this experience, and the conversations that I've had after the experience are what make it what it was.
Yep.
And that, for me, is rewarding beyond words. To see people who had spent and I did experience this to some extent in Jamaica, but you get a week with people, you come in, you try to show them you care, and then the week is gone and it's over. And something like this, where we have an ongoing community and you're seeing people who have not felt like they had a community. And you say you a bunch of nerds or whatever. I kind of have said that I feel like we're kind of like the island of misfit toys on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right?
Yep.
And to see all of us little misfits have a place feels so good, man. It feels so good. What's been so rewarding for me is that I have had individuals that I went to grade school with. We all went to school, lived an hour and a half away from Louisville. Several people have moved closer to Louisville, the city center. And a number of those folks who I was really good friends with that either had addiction over the years or severe depression have now come into Sanctuary and have found relief through this community and through this sacrament. And so to be able to be of service and help the people who I loved when I was a kid and we were just rejects together, is that's rewarding.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's fun. We definitely are not pointers, but starting here in Salt Lake City, our box of toys has a lot of post-Mormons in it, and the thing is set up to where you leave wrecked and use direction, and you lose so much, and so it's fun to rib and get back together. It was funny. Someone walked in Sunday for the first time, and I looked around, and he said, "Oh, there's my old." So it's just fun as people, leave the church and that we get back together. So I think I told you this. We have Mormons and Catholics, man. You just about anyone. Hey, were you Mormon or Catholic? And you're going to hear yes from most of them.
Yeah. They really did a number on us for sure. What's going on in Florida, Sasha?
quite a bit. There was actually I wanted to let everyone here know about something that should be discussed. I think it was either 3 or 4 days ago. I read a rather concerning Yelp review about Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church from a former volunteer. This is rather heavy territory. Would y'all be willing to entertain this discussion?
I mean, we'll see where it goes. I would prefer not to get into too much of the dark side of the psychedelic world. It exists, and I'm happy to talk about it to an extent, but also want to, you know. Sorry, I don't know if y'all can see the comments over here. Yeah, I would just let's do it just as a little bit of public service. I think that Soul Quest has multiple issues that may be worth being brought to light to some extent. Without spending the entirety, we got a half hour left, but I don't want to spend the whole half hour talking about the fuckery that's going on out there. But
yeah, that's a good summary.
What's going on, Sasha? Give us a quick lowdown.
Yes, so it was just 3 or 4 days ago that a former volunteer at Soul Quest came forward with a Yelp review. It's still up to my knowledge. And in this post, she alleged that numerous Soul Quest staff had been neglecting congregants after they had been administered ayahuasca, especially when they were requesting emergency medical care beyond the scope of what could be provided at Soul Quest. And when she raised these same allegations to the higher ups at Soul Quest, her position was allegedly terminated as a result of this. I won't go into the details, but it was, if people want to look it up, it's there.
All I want to say is, how the fuck you gonna have 100 people a weekend on ayahuasca and not be neglecting a hell of a lot of people? There ain't no fucking. There's just no fucking way.
You know, I've told this story, Divine, what I was doing, and our first ceremony, we had 30 people. Man, I probably should be in jail for that one. That was. I'm just setting. That was the worst setting ever. Do those big group things.
Well, I mean, I definitely envision doing some big group things. Now, ayahuasca is a whole different beast. It's a whole different ball game for one.
Yeah.
The ability to moderate dosing with psilocybin creates even a broader gap in some of the harm reduction issues, right? And I have played out in my mind the vision of a sacrament, like 100-person or 200-person sacrament event for a long time. And I think that there are, with psilocybin in particular, I think that there are some pretty basic ways that we can do that through screening and dosing and setting and facilitation and all of that, and keep it really safe. It's not something that I would ever imagine doing weekend after weekend like Soul Quest has. And they're charging like minimum $900 a pop, and they're getting 90 to 100 people a weekend. Where the fuck's all that money going? Like,
I agree with you on the bigger groups. So these were a lot of newbies, so I never should have done that. But if you are so, and these are experienced people, it's a whole different ball game if someone has experience versus being a newbie.
Well, I just want to say that I love that you are willing to talk about your mistakes publicly. Like that's something that is it's not happening enough in the psychedelic community. There is no way that you can be working in this space for more than a couple of years and not make mistakes. And it's sequestering that information and keeping it out of the public view, it is actually providing opportunity for more mistakes to arise. So I follow the same model. I want to let people know the things that I've done that were messed up, that were just kind of inadvertent, that I didn't see the picture big enough going into it like I could have or maybe should have, and I want to share that so other people kind of get the idea. I am curious, like what kind of events are you all doing now? Are you doing group sacrament events, or is this all still
Yeah.
kind of people in their homes? How are you working with that?
One rightly scared the bejeebers out of me, and so we then ceremonies, and now what TDA is doing is ceremonies. Then that's not wink, wink, nod, nod. Everything we are doing is sober, and the point of that is talked about red flags in ceremonies. We did breath work. We're going to do an ice bay. Someone talked about self-love, self-esteem, and go before and after. And we're trying to build connection, because where we're to for the present, and we're learning these things can change, is we want each other and hold each other, and then talk about, okay, I'd like people who've done ceremonies are getting together with these who haven't. This person's going to guide it. Not, I heard you describe earlier maybe a summer camp kind of experience. People come on, then they go to their separate areas. Well, they're alone. The people they were with now, and we're having, I think, a lot of good things. People are just planning their ceremonies. If you have someone who cares about you, holds you, is looking, that's probably going to work out really well. And so that's we're going to start teaching people how to grow. And the one sacrament, psychedelic sacrament, you can grow on your own with commitment to religious autonomy. And we will do some trip prep things. I really feel like we're finding our feet, and who knows, back to having, like you're doing, some ceremonies where we'd have a lot. Let's not do it in the rain and cold that we did that. We might get back to that, but for now, all of everything TDA does is sober, but there are tons of ceremonies going on that people are doing.
Okay. Yeah, it's really fun and interesting and a little bit unnerving and nerve-wracking to be figuring this out sort of as we go. I guess I had a lot of experience running groups in Jamaica, so that gives me a different bit of more of a experience and skill set coming into the group thing.
Right.
But like I think where my perspective is most set apart from the more formal clinical work is, it's best described in a quote from one of our newly trained clerics at the last retreat. We had a 15-person retreat with seven clerics, including myself, there as support. And I was the only one that dosed with the group. I was the only cleric or minister, whatever, that dosed alongside the group. I took 2 grams. And when we were having our integration conversation or something, one of the new clerics, Charles, who was on here last week, he said, I looked over at one point and I thought, is Eric is he a caretaker or is he a participant? And I thought, that's exactly right there, Charles. That's what I'm going for, because I truly believe that where this road goes is not a separation of the therapist and the client, but a immersion of each other into the experience, and those who have more experience like really diving in and being fully embedded in this communion with each other. There is no doubt to me that I'm a better support person when I have taken mushrooms. That, there's boundaries there. I can't take 10 grams. I've taken up to, well, it's not, that's not true. That's not true. I had a client that I've worked with who, a member now. She was a client of mine in Jamaica. She's now become a member of the church. And the last time we worked together, she took 25 grams and I took 12 and a half. And we had like the work that we got done together was incredible. And I couldn't have showed up for her like I did had I not taken that dose. Would I take 12 and a half grams with anybody else? No, she's a very different person. She's very different. And her level of trust in me and my trust in her, having worked with her over a long period of time, allowed me to go there. What'd you want to say, Sasha?
25 grams?
This human being.
And you took how many?
She's the only person I've ever allowed to dose me, and I let her dose me. And she gave me 12 and a half, and I did it.
Wow.
It was a big one. I turn into a feathered dragon kind of beast at those in those ranges, and we fucking slaughtered some demons that day, buddy. Let me tell you.
And I massively agree with that. If I'm with friends and everyone is experienced and we're going to worship, and we've been in the space, and I just have zero concern for if we know each other and we have had experiences together, and we all have someone on speed dial who's close by. But I mean, that's just a great and appropriate way to worship where everyone can.
Well, and yeah, I mean, oh God, I love that you say worship, because it kind of opens up a can of worms for me. I understand us. I experience the human as a technology, and we have abilities that we are not normally aware of. And so as we open up our perception to our truer, our broader self, then we can use our being like a tool. And while I don't consider myself a healer or anything like that, I think what I experience happening is that everything that we struggle with, all the trauma, all the pain, all the stuff that we struggle with is blocked energy. And we are all, the five of us are intertwined energetically in a way here. Imagine if we were physically sharing the same space, and we know that we all have an electromagnetic field. We know that we are beings of energy. And so the more that we can engage with that, then the more we're able to, through clearing out our own blockages, help others clear out theirs. And I know that this might be getting into some weirder territory, which I'm personally fine with. But like that's been my experience, is that the more I heal myself, then the more I'm able to be as a healing support for others, and not just in like, yeah, you're doing great. Like we're all one. We are one organism, and
Yeah,
that's just all there is to it.
Well, that's what worship means to me. Worship means to connect with others, with the universe, and my favorite person to worship, Sarah, my wife. And after 32 years of marriage, we were really getting to know each other in large part because of psychedelics. It walls and when we're together, and psilocybin, yeah, we don't need a guide there. I mean, that'd just be someone getting. It's just fun to connect in that space, and yeah, like you said, energetic level and connect in ways we just haven't in those prior decades of marriage.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Do you want to say something, Sasha?
In the same,
Sorry,
did you want to finish that thought, Steve?
that extends beyond spouses also. I mean, I have dear friends who are off when we worshiped together because the barriers came down and we connected in a way that hadn't and probably never would have but for that.
For sure. Yeah.
So the thought I wanted to discuss was, broadly put, related to the role that spiritual guides and healers take when they partake of the sacrament with their congregants, with their clients, what have you. And I'd like to briefly recall the fact that indigenous healers, especially the Mazatec people, did in fact conduct ceremonies where the healer or curandera in person in question, they also took of the mushroom. And there's been a lot of heated discussion as of late about whether or not the guide, facilitator, whatever term you want to use, should also partake of the mushroom while serving as a healer, therapist, guide, what have you. And when Eric was talking about the instance where, hi there, is it, am I reading that right? Is that Brad?
Yeah, Brad joined in here. We'll get some commentary from Brad here shortly. Go ahead, though.
Yes, but I just want to... Yeah. And I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts on essentially the role that these people should play in ensuring that they can still provide a modicum of safety while they also take of the substance, and if there is indeed a line where there is just too much. And Eric, I wanted to briefly ask if you could follow up on whether or not there was whether or not there were other people present while you had taken that large dose.
Yeah, that's great question. Glad you asked that. There was one individual that did not take any mushrooms. There was one individual that took 6 grams with us who was significantly experienced, and both of those individuals were good friends with the 25 grammer. And we all had known each other for quite some time, but there was one person that did not consume any, one that consumed 6. I did 12 and a half, and then she did the 25. I think what you're bringing up is a really great question that I'm not sure we have a great way to answer it. And that is, when and how do we determine that someone is competent enough to take mushrooms with the people that they're supporting and be able to take care of whatever? I can say for myself that I've dealt with some crazy shit on 5 and 6 grams, both from the people that I'm working with and also people who came into the space that weren't invited. In Jamaica, we sometimes would trip on the beach and you'd have people come up, and no matter what kind of where I'm at, I've got to be able to be that interface. And like it's real, it's relevant, and it's not like it's not something that should just be taken lightly. When I talk like this, I guess providing some context and some backstory, this is 23 years that I've been doing this work. And it very gradually did I start to enter into that space of taking mushrooms, taking sacrament with the people that I was supporting, right? There's so much that I could talk about here in how at the deeper levels of this experience, how you have to be able to have a center of knowing, right? There has to always be a kernel. And this is something that's not talked about in a harm reduction that's really important. And I don't want to burn up the last few minutes of this, but I'll just say that one of the things that we really try to drive home to people as they start to work on their own with sacrament is that the most important muscle that you can strengthen for this work is the don't leave muscle. Fucking stay put. Mushrooms, they can convince you that you are dying in so many ways. You can be so certain that you're being ripped to shreds. But if you just stay there, if you just hunker down and get through it, you will always come back together better. But this is a really big topic that's very nuanced, and there's a long and a lot of conversation that we could and should have about this. I'm happy to anytime. I think this is one of the areas that I have the most experience, that I could bring a lot of value. But right now, we've got a couple of newcomers to the conversation that I want to invite in. I don't know, Brad was in first, but I don't know if his mic is working. He occasionally has some issues there. Give us a sound check, Brad. Nothing. Looks like he's not happening. Carla? Can you hear us? Talk to us.
I can hear you. I'm just listening in.
Oh, well, you're here live. You're welcome to ask questions or comments. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, Sasha, thank you for, to your point, Eric, I don't ever like to, talk bad about not that you were talking bad about anyone, Sasha, but just that whole soul quest thing. It's been on my mind for a long time. I had a cousin's husband who went there. I lived in Florida for many years. It's been on my radar for a hot minute. Just doing all the research I can on that. So it's just weird that topic came up when it did, because I guess maybe just pause on that for a minute. But yeah, I'm just doing a deep dive right now and listening to everything I can. It's been many, many years since I've taken a really large dose of anything. So maybe in the past year or so, maybe 2 years, I've dosed, I don't even know how many micrograms or grams. About quarterly is usually kind of my speed right now. But definitely looking to uproot some things and kind of get past those blockages. So yeah, I think I spent my whole 30s in like this weird denial space. I don't know what's happening. I'm ready to purge spiritually. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just like to listen in and see where everyone else is at. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Steve, what about your demographics? What are you seeing in terms of age in particular in your groups?
Yeah, I'd say our average age is early to mid 40s. It's a lot older than I think. Maybe that's because I'm older, and but yeah, they've heard about it, through Michael Pollan, or they're just kind of tired of living the way that they've lived. They want different. So yeah, our demographic, again, pretty quiet people and older.
Do you get the "I'm too old for psychedelics"? Do you ever hear that?
Not really. Very first ceremony, we had someone who's 73 years old. She's still very active, and so she kind of sets the pace. That heavens, you come to any of our things and you look around, and well, you're not going to be too old there.
People say it to me. I hear it just like I'm in conversation, talking with people about what I do or whatnot. People who are in their it's very often people who are in their 40s, like the 60s and up, 50s, 60s. Like I see, we have a lot of people, a lot of members. Same in Jamaica, a lot of that age demographic. But in the mid 30s and 40s, a lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, I outgrew that. I'm too old for all that stuff." And it always strikes me as so kind of funny, because in a way, what Carla's pointing to is that after all of that life that happens is when psychedelics are generally more useful than in our 20s, right? Yeah. So I'm curious to see how that changes.
My wife, that's what she often tells people, you know, young people are talking about them and she's some big life mistakes, and then psychedelics might help you process that.
Go fuck up and then come back and see us.
Exactly.
Well, I also wonder what it would be like if psychedelics, if psilocybin in particular. I mean, I just, I always come back to psilocybin. It has always been for me the primary sacrament. But at the same time, I think that there's the accessibility, there's the sustainability of it, there's the safety of it. There's only one medication that has any kind of interaction with psilocybin. I have dosed my son when he was 14 years old. I dosed my son. The Mazatec, there's a long-standing tradition of Mazatec dosing 7 and 8 year olds, right, who had a proclivity towards shamanism. My son came to Jamaica and dosed with me there. He's had some doses here in the States, and I'm confident that it has saved his life, right? And so I do wonder, can't help but wonder, what our culture would look like if these experiences, if these sacraments were worked into, rites of passage or just general well-being through our adolescence.
Well, I think that it starts off with just the fact of the framework at which we're raised in America and even in, Western Europe, is this idea of it just something like the Mazateka it's foreign. It is so foreign that way of life of dosing with children at that age. And it's just because we have these Western biases in whatever that looks like.
We can give them Ritalin. We can hand out Ritalin, Adderall. We can give kids meth, right? But as soon as I start talking about giving us a 14-year-old, even Sasha's like, whoa, hold up.
Yeah.
I saw you take a step back there. It's all good.
I mean, we're learning. Earlier on in this call, we talked about, you spoke about people who were coming to TDA for healing in mental health aspects. And we are really the first culture that has separated what mental health is, because even back to when we talk about the Hippocratic Oath, spiritual health and mental health and overall well-being was connected. And that's where the gods come in with the symbolism. So, it's just so weird for me whenever we have to make this line, because 150 years ago, some white man decided that we had to put a line in the sand. And I just wonder like how that has worked in with the people that you're working with. Have they came to find that there is actually no line, that is a figment of this Western culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's the connectivity of everything. Just these false silos. How do we separate out our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, right? How are we doing? How are we connecting with others? What's our...
Yeah, no, makes me just, I just kind of want to start throwing things, because I get really upset thinking about I do think, I don't know that it started deliberately, but there has definitely been a deliberate misleading of the people. This big report that just came out a week or two ago about depression not being linked to serotonin depletion, when that has been the selling point for 30 years of some of the most dangerous medicines and therapies that have ever been doled out to mankind. And we've got to have a fucking argument and conversation to prove that mushrooms are safe or that cannabis is safe.
Yeah.
It's insane, and it's infuriating to me.
pick up a thread earlier. You know, I grew up in religion. I think that I completely lived my life according to someone else authentic. That led to my, you know, suicidal ideation. I was just with myself, with the universe. I can only imagine if I had had a dose of mushrooms somewhere along the way, that would have said, wait.
Hey,
take a look.
I'm imagining me as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, just pissed off and full of angst, and someone feeding me mushrooms, and then me listening to the music that I was listening to at that time. It would have been such a whoa, what's going on around me, you know? And then unpack that, because, you know, as you start to see the artifacts that are around us and how they're a reflection of our lives, which is another beautiful thing that psychedelics can do. And again, it's not something that I hear a whole lot of talk about. There's so much to talk about in this realm. But you ever take mushrooms and like check out your environment, like check out your home? Like, how do I feel about go through your music collection, go through your book collection while you're coming down from a 5-gram dose, and see how much of that like feels good. And that's what I just kind of would like to leave us on, is ultimately, and we talked about this in our call today, that's something that I have been coming back to, particularly as we're back in the groups. You know, you got a lot of people that are coming desperate for help, and there is this mentality in our culture that you got to work hard, you got to get through all the junk, you got to have like all this therapy, you got to talk about all the bad things that have happened in life. And I know that that's a part of the path. I have been down it many times myself, but the end of the path is joy. The end of the path is celebration and happiness for being. I mean, we're fucking in these bodies that can do so many crazy things. Water keeps us alive, right? We are magical. We're magical. Breath, the invisible thing that binds us all together. And getting in touch with that, finding that it really is about joy. It is about, and we can, yes, again, like we can dig through all the trauma, but one of the things that psychedelics can really effectively do is also help us bypass all that. We don't have to spend 5 years reliving the abuse that we lived through in our childhood. I mean, we can, and if that's the path that we have to take to get there, then so be it. But if I can share with anybody the lesson that I have learned in suffering through reliving all of my traumas, that you can just go around that big wall. You don't have to climb your way over it. You can just go around it. It's like really tall, but it's really narrow. And so on the other side of that is joy. And the more that we make that our focus, and finding the love that is life, the joy that is life, a celebration that is life, then that's worship. That's what religion is should be trying to get us to. That's what community should be supporting us all and just kind of bringing us all along to that place of joy. So thanks for bringing that up, Steve. That was a good thing to remind us of.
I love it. Thank you.
Words.
Wonderful.
Yeah, man, this is great. You should anytime. I'll just kind of remind you every now and then it's happening. You know, you're welcome to come in anytime. There's another gentleman that I met with from St. Louis that's starting a church, or has started a church. This convention, if you will, is still very much in my mind. So we got some things that we can talk about offline, but look forward to talking with you again here publicly. Those of you, again, who are hanging on, we are releasing a Psilocybin Says podcast with Steve Urquhart of the Divine Assembly Wednesday. Look for that. That's a little bit more in-depth conversation just between him and I, but this has been a really nice overview of some big topics within psychedelics. Sasha, always appreciate you joining us here. You've got great value that you add. Carla, it's nice to see you virtually. I hope we'll see you maybe at our Wednesday meeting or just sometime soon. And Tristan, as always, man, I sure do appreciate all the help and support that you provide. That's it. Anybody got any last words they want to say?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, till next time.